And now, everyone, let's put our hands together and give a warm welcome to your host, Scott Dansby, Full Sail University's Director of Industry Relations.
Hello. Hello. How is everybody? How are you guys doing today? How's Hall of Fame been so far? Yeah, it's been a fantastic week. Well, you guys are in for an amazing event coming up here. How many, just out of curiosity, how many folks out here are fans or use some product or technology of Sony's? Yeah, okay, yeah, you can clap. It's all right. Well, Sony is such a great partner of Full Sail's. They've supported us for so many years with special events just like this, as well as helping us get their technology in your hands to use here on campus. So I am honored to be able to announce our friends from Sony who are here today, who've brought in a special guest as well for you guys. I don't want to waste any more time with me talking. I want to bring them up on stage. I know one of our special guests from Sony has a special announcement, so I'd like to welcome the president of Sony's Professional Solutions Group of the Americas, Katsunori Yamanouchi.
Whoa. Thank you, Scott. Thank you. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. How are you? Wow, I'm really overwhelmed. Thank you very much for your time. I'm really impressed because, you know, as my position, I have several occasions to talk in front of such people, but always like press media or sometimes very aged corporate executives. So this is entirely different energy. I feel. I really appreciate that. Thank you. So I'm really honored to be here today, and this is my first experience coming to the Hall of Fame this week. And as you know, Sony and Full Sail had a long relationship, which we're really proud. So I'm really glad to have an occasion today, Sony present to you that our latest technology along with our partner. So I hope you really enjoy this presentation. But let me say a few words to kick off this presentation. So I learned this Hall of Fame week is a very special event celebrating outstanding achievement of Full Sail alumni who are working in so many different areas of our industry. From Sony's perspective, Full Sail is a very unique institution and innovative approach to the education and extending far beyond just only classroom. Because we believe it is really important. Of course, theory is really important, but at the same time, balance its practical and hands-on experience that the student will have. And we believe at Full Sail, you could get both in a world class. And that is proven by this Hall of Fame inductees we honor today, and through their works, their contribution to the creative industry and community, and also their professionalism. As I said, Sony and Full Sail have enjoyed a long history, and we collaborate each other, and at the same time, we learn each other. And from the time of SD, standard definition, early time of HD, and now, as you know very well, 4K, HDR, and also media workflow solution. So we've been collaborating together, learning each other together, which is great for us. So we are really proud of this role, Sony's role, to provide a state-of-the-art technology to the generation of the Full Sail students and helping you to be prepared for your career in media industries. So having access to cutting-edge product or equipment makes your educational experience more fulfilling and relevant. And it's Sony's really wish and also goal to provide the tools necessary for the navigating the demand needs of the modern communities and the digital media industry. And as I'm being in touch with our customers, now I personally feel there is a dramatic changes happening in the media industry. So they are trying to change by themselves the workflow or operations and try to pursue the efficiency by adopting a new technology and so on. So we Sony commit to continue to contribute to industry, but also at the same time, it is important for us to contribute to the young future creator like yourself, and we commit to continue in this way. So today, I hope this presentation would be interesting. And we'd like to show our example of a great commitment that we will support students, but at the same time we are supporting professionals. So in order to tell more details, I'd like to invite my colleague Peter Crithary on the stage. Thank you very much.
All right. What's up, Full Sail? We're all excited to be here, right? Yes? All right. I'm Peter Crithary with Sony. I represent the cinema motion picture camera technology that I'm sure a lot of you guys use, as the hands went up earlier, which we're really proud of. I have to say that Full Sail, the technology you guys have here, the standards, the cutting edge, curriculum, the programming, you guys rock. This place is amazing. We were touring around earlier with Scott, looking at all of the different areas of what you guys are working with and learning from, and it's really, really impressive. We work with a lot of film schools, we work with a lot of cinematographers, and I have to tell you, this place is a standout. So congratulations to all of you guys as well for Full Sail. Awesome. All right. All right. So, without further ado, I know you're anxious to get started. I definitely want to get started. I am going to say just a couple of words about our special guest because he's actually going to take you through his own introduction. But Bob Poole has been around a long time, very experienced, very talented cinematographer. He has a very unique journey, a very unique set of skills. I have a very unique set of skills. I wanted to say that, sorry. So his journey is amazing, and you guys are going to get a lot of information, a lot of learning experience out of it. He is an Emmy award-winning cinematographer. He won an Emmy for wildlife cinematography. So that's a huge accomplishment that we're all really proud of. So without further ado, we're going to roll a quick sizzle reel to visually introduce Bob, and then I'll come back and bring him up onto the stage. So enjoy. Thank you very much.
Hold on.
Always another day, and you don't have to hide away.
I marked this route from an airplane. Hold on.
It's time to run, it's time to run.
I think this is one of the biggest channels.
All right. That's really cool, right? You ain't seen nothing yet. Bob Poole, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Peter. Wow, awesome. You guys, you're so lucky. I can't believe this university that I've been seeing today. How cool. I wish I would have had the opportunity to do something like this. Really nice. Well, thanks for coming out and hearing my story, which is definitely a little different. But I think each of us have a unique story, right? And the path that we go on our professional journey reflects that. I'm a wildlife cinematographer, filmmaker, because that's what I wanted to be. But it's not for everybody. Believe me, like some people would hate what I do. But I love it. And I think that's the thing. People often ask me how I got started in this career, sort of hoping to find a key to open the door for themselves. But I think the thing is that all of us, we all have our own key. We just have to find it. Ours is a collaborative career, right? So we work with other people. Every job we work on leads to the next. And so in that way, we can steer ourselves in the direction we want to go. And we might not know exactly what that direction is, but we learn as we go, and we get better and better at it. And so in that way, we can end up where we want to go. So maybe by sharing my story with you, I can maybe help you see what I'm talking about, how you end up choosing the direction you want to go. Recently, National Geographic asked me to develop a show about cheetahs that was using me as a character in the film. My idea was to follow a mother cheetah and her cubs 24/7. The challenge was keeping up with her because, they're difficult to keep up with. But that made it a legitimate adventure. And there was no way to predict where she would go or what she would do. Once I found this cheetah, I couldn't afford to lose her because if I did, it could take days to find her again. And during that time, I'd bound to be missing a lot of good action because cheetahs hunt every day and their life is just one perilous adventure. The project had to be shot in 4K, so I needed a 4K camera, but I also needed a camera that could record at high speed, because I needed to be able to show the cheetahs running in slow motion. And it was tough. I needed to have enough cliffhanging sequences to get us through, 5 TV commercial breaks. And also, there was a sense of urgency for me because the clock was ticking. I only had 1 month in the field to get an action-packed hour of TV. Here's the trailer to that show. Absolutely amazing. A cheetah is the fastest thing before. All I gotta do is keep up. I'm Poole. Ever since I was a boy growing up in Africa, I've been tracking and filming wild animals. My mother with cubs, nothing better than that. I'm in a secret part of Kenya that's still as wild as I remember, where a special mother cheetah is letting me into her life. 1 minute they're having a ball, and the next minute they're scared and running for their lives. She's got to do whatever it takes to protect her cubs. This right here is why so many cheetah cubs don't make it. Mom's defending. Gotta go. Wait. They're going after the cubs. Hold on, you guys. Oh, sorry. All right. Get up that tree. Oh my God, that was a close call. She's such a clever mother. Cheetahs are in trouble all over Africa. Cubs' chances of survival are razor thin. She doesn't just have to be good. She's got to get everything right every single day. Oh God, she's only got 1 cub. Their lives depend on it. Where's the other cub? Thank you. That's me on the spare tire. Yeah, it's funny. My parents moved to Africa when I was 3 years old, first to Malawi and then to Kenya. I grew up collecting snakes and lizards and all kinds of other wild pets. My sisters and I, we got to know wildlife at a very early age. And my mother and father were always up for a good adventure. When I was in high school, we spent a lot of time as a family camping in the African bush, and we were always on safari. My parents just loved camping, and so I got to know the plants and the animals and the birds, and it's just Africa. I don't know if you ever get a chance to go there if you've been. It's just gets in your blood. When I was in high school, my dad was the director of a wildlife foundation based in Nairobi, Kenya, and he worked in the national parks all over East Africa. He often took me with him, and I got to see incredible places like Tsavo and the Serengeti. We didn't have TV, and I rarely got to go to films. But my dad had a camera, and I was always into taking pictures. So I learned a little bit of photography, but knew nothing about film production. Sadly, my father died in a car accident when I was in high school, 1978. But before he died, he'd organized a school holiday job for me working with a game capture team in northern Kenya. We were darting these Cape buffaloes from the air and moving them to a place where they'd be away from people. The human population was exploding, and people were coming head to head with these buffalo. They're really dangerous animals. So one day, the helicopter pilot went to fly for a National Geographic film crew that was making a documentary about elephants in the area. And the helicopter pilot invited me to go with him. The film crew invited me to join their team when the game capture was over, and I don't know if it was because they were taking pity on me from my father's death, but I went back and I worked with them. It was the beginning of my National Geographic career, and I was 17 years old. So lucky me, I got an early start. But during that time, my older sister, Joyce, was making remarkable discoveries about elephants that explained a lot about their behavior. In 1977, she'd gone to Amboseli National Park in Kenya to study bull elephants. And she'd gotten to know a population of over 1,000 elephants individually. In this picture, she's with a family group that she knew really well. And these are totally wild elephants. So Joyce is making a call to them that sounds something like this. Of course, the elephants have no idea what she's talking about. But it's true, you know, we do make that sound to elephants, and I don't know why. Elephants have their own way of communicating. They signal with their trunks and their ears and even their feet. But they also make trumpets and rumbles and a whole combination of different trumpets and rumbles, and they all mean different things. It's a language, actually. So, but Joyce was there to study the bulls, and in studying the bulls, she discovered something called keynote. Joyce discovered something called must. Oh, that's not it either. Excuse me, now I'm gonna have to jump ahead to the rumble. And finally, Joyce discovered something called must, which happens to mature bulls periodically. Their bodies become loaded with testosterone, and they go into this dangerous state of sexual and aggressive behavior. It gives them an advantage over non-must bulls for breeding. So in studying these musk bulls, you know, it's really dangerous work because they're constantly dribbling this pungent smelling urine. And Joyce had to run around and collect this urine before it absorbed into the dry soil. And in doing that, in the proximity of these great big dangerous musk bulls, she kept hearing this very faint vocalization. And it didn't make any sense to her because something so formidable, you know, you would think they'd be like bellowing these thunderous, you know, vocalizations. So she thought about it for a long time and hypothesized that these big bull elephants were actually making a really loud sound. She just couldn't hear it. So she brought in some specialized sound recording devices. In those days, it was a Nagra. And she discovered that the elephants were communicating in frequencies that we couldn't hear that traveled over long distances. So I'm going to play you one of these sounds right now, but it's been cranked up, it's been amplified so we can hear it, and we're only hearing the very high end of an otherwise much more powerful sound. Here it goes. The components of that sound that we can't hear travel up to 10 kilometers. Well, National Geographic thought this was pretty cool stuff, so they sent a film crew out to make a documentary about my sister Joyce, and I managed to wiggle my way onto the crew as a camera assistant. And the cameraman was this, you know, renowned National Geographic guy. He was like, "Hey, I just lost my assistant, and I'm going to South America next in 2 weeks. Do you want to go with me? And I was like, yeah. I just wanted an adventure. So I stuck with him. I went with him, traveled the world, and I didn't know anything about television, cameras, nothing. So I learned on the job, lighting, how to build sequences, how the equipment worked, everything. Well, eventually, I pitched a story to National Geographic about my older sister and a bigger story about her. But the condition was that I would get to shoot it. So they sent me out there with 10 rolls of film, 400-foot rolls of film. That's like, 10 minutes per load, 10 rolls of film to show them what I could do. I made sure every single frame was as good as I could possibly make it. And I got the project. So that led me to a career as a National Geographic cameraman. I traveled all over the world. I worked in all these countries. I had absolute insanely great adventures. I had just the greatest time of all. And I loved my work. So for like 20 years, I was doing this. And during that time, Africa changed. And so much that I loved about Africa started to disappear. So I decided to shift the focus of my career to work more on wildlife conservation films in Africa. And National Geographic was making a lot of these films. And so I was suddenly on these projects. I was getting to go to places like Congo, Mali, Gabon, Sudan, Kenya, Tanzania, Botswana, all over Africa making wildlife films. And everywhere I went, I had a new challenge, a different animal species to film. And so I learned different techniques along the way. In 2007, National Geographic sent me to Mali to film the northernmost herd of African elephants. And it was for a series called Great Migrations. So the elephants in Mali, they live in a tremendously hostile environment. Daytime temperatures there can reach 128 degrees in the shade. And the elephants have to move to find enough to eat and travel long distances for water. Their annual migration takes them on a journey of over 34,000 square kilometers. And it's the longest migration of African elephants in Africa. In the dry season, they gather at the only source of water available to them, but so do all the cattle, sheep, goats, and the nomadic Tuareg herders. Elephants and humans have operated like this in the Gorma for centuries by carefully respecting each other's boundaries. And it's amazing to see elephants and cattle mingling together. But really difficult place to film, because in order to get these kind of shots, I had to break that age-old boundaries and get really close to these elephants to get these kind of intimate shots. So I needed like a really good lens and steady wind. Because the thing is, elephants can see, but they don't really look. But they can hear and they can smell incredibly well. So if I was ever detected, things go wrong really quickly. Every day, the sun comes up like a fireball, and the elephants return from, foraging out in the desert. I wanted to film the sun rising behind the elephants, and it was really dangerous, actually, walking around on foot with these elephants. And many times, I thought I'd been detected, but I managed every time to get away with it. I never really understood. It took me a month of trying before I finally got these shots. When things become really desperate for these elephants, there's almost no water left. It's really pretty intense. The rains are the thing we needed to film for this migration, because it's what gets the elephants moving. So basically, what happens is they get these big dust storms that come up, and we needed to film these dust storms. And one morning I just felt something different. And I ran up on top of the hill outside of our camp, and I saw this huge wall of sand. So we immediately started shooting, and this giant wall of sand came towards us. It rolled over us like a freight train, and it instantly went from like bright sunny day to darkness. And then it started to turn red, and the wind kept howling. Our cameras were just filled with sand, just pummeled by sand. It was crazy. Our camp and our equipment was in shambles, but the elephants took off in the direction of the rain with the nomads. And we also carried on our journey. So the thing about Mali is a tremendous place, but unfortunately now militants have occupied the elephants' range, and it's almost impossible to go there. It's so dangerous that the conservation groups can't work there anymore, and these militants are killing elephants for their ivory, which is really, really sad. So we don't know about that. And you know, in Africa, it's unfortunately so many places are affected by war, people and wildlife. In 2008, I was sent to Mozambique to make a film about a national park there called Gorongosa. And Gorongosa had a tremendous story as well. I'm going to show you the trailer for that right now.
At the southern end of Africa's Great Rift Valley lies Gorongosa National Park, Mozambique. It's April, the end of the wet season, and rivers run deep and wide. All water flows to Lake Urema, the beating heart at the center of Gorongosa. And a mecca for living things. Beneath the placid surface, crocs stalk their prey. In the skies above, eagles battle for fishing rights. Once it seemed that Africa had outdone itself at Gorongosa with its riots of wildlife. It was known as the place where Noah left his ark. An African paradise teeming with amazing creatures. They're not hoping to save just a few animals here. They're embarking on perhaps the most ambitious park restoration effort ever attempted to save Africa's lost Eden.
Thank you. Well, Gorongosa sits almost dead center in the huge country of Mozambique. It's about 1 million acres of wilderness, surrounded by more wilderness. Just to give you an idea, that coastline is 2,500 miles. So it's a big country. Gorongosa had been one of the greatest national parks in all of Africa. It was known for teeming herds of buffalo and zebra and wildebeest. There were hundreds and hundreds of lions and thousands of elephants. Then, in 1964, a war for independence broke out against Portugal, followed by an even longer civil war that lasted until 1992. About 1 million people were killed. During that time, Renamo, the resistance, based themselves on Mount Gorongosa, and soldiers from both sides of the war fed themselves off the park's wildlife and traded the elephant's ivory for guns and ammunition. When it was over, the park was left for dead, with no wildlife, no tourists. It was left. But then about 10 years ago, an international team led by this guy, an American philanthropist named Greg Carr, formed a partnership with the Mozambican government to start a 20-year-long restoration to sort of try to recover this national park. When I first arrived in 2008, Greg flew me around, and from the air, it was pretty amazing. Here's a little behind the scenes.
You get up and you fly around a place like Gorongosa and it just looks fantastic. And you see, oh man, there's hippos there, or look, there's elephants over here, or there's, my God, a herd of buffalo, look at that down there. But then, you get down on the ground and suddenly it's just all you can see is tall grass and bush and forests, and it's very difficult on the ground.
Soon, Poole began to crack the Gorongosa code and find prime locations for filming the park's spectacular wildlife.
Well, there's a wonderful place in Gorongosa called the Songwe River, where the lake was actually drying up and all the fish were sort of running out of water, and all the birds that eat fish were just able to pick them off, and it gave us incredible opportunity for filming, especially with the high-speed camera, where you could actually sit and anticipate that an eagle was going to swoop down and grab a fish, or a heron was going to stab one. Eagle swooping down to catch fish at 500 frames a second. And it's just magic, and it's the same with water, when you see the waterfalls and water just dropping like this, backlit, beautiful water captured in super slow motion. It's just extraordinary, and it adds so much to the film.
The crew used a powerful filming weapon, the Cineflex.
And the Cineflex is this wonderful piece of equipment that sits on the front of a helicopter, and it totally gyro-stabilizes a big, long lens. And it's basically like having the most stable tripod you could ever have, but in the air. So we were able to do these shots wrapping around waterfalls and getting tight shots of elephants on the ground, and then big wide shots of birds and seeing the whole place. It's really a very remarkable piece of equipment, and it was just critical that we had it in Gorongosa.
So, Africa's Lost Eden. I really fell in love with that park, and I wanted to stick around. But of course, in our business, we do one project, right, and then we start looking for the next one, or hopefully we've got one lined up. But National Geographic was looking for a show that they could that I could do, that they could put me in as a character, and so we were talking about different ideas, and I said, well, the elephants down there in Gorongosa, they're pretty intense, maybe we should do a film about them. And, they were so, I'll tell you the story about these elephants. So, huge wilderness, right? Tons of space for elephants. But unfortunately, during the war, both sides of the army was killing elephants like crazy because they needed mostly the ivory, which they would trade then for guns and ammunition. So when the war was over, there was only like a few hundred elephants left. 95% of the elephants had been killed. And the ones that were left didn't like us very well. And many of them were tuskless because soldiers hadn't wasted their bullets on elephants that didn't have ivory. So now there was a new problem in the park, and people spoke about being charged and chased and having these terrifying experiences with these elephants. Well, I kept thinking that, by running away from these charging elephants, that you were actually provoking them to charge. I thought that if you just stood your ground, stood still, that the elephants would have nothing to chase, and they'd ignore us the way elephants do all over the rest of Africa, where you have elephants in national parks. Of course, everybody thought I was nuts. And National Geographic was like, oh, that sounds like a good film. So they commissioned this show called War Elephants. And I talked to my sister Joyce about it. Joyce had then spent the last 35 years studying African elephants in the wild. She focused on their communication, but she was known as the world's leading expert on their behavior. And so Joyce came to Gorongosa to see these elephants for herself. And by the way, these elephants have been knocking vehicles over, right? So we were off to a bad start. But we both agreed that we wouldn't drive away from these charging elephants. And so I built a protective metal frame for my Land Rover that I hoped would protect us if I was wrong about the charging elephants. And we went to work. When the elephants charged, we simply just turned off the car and sat quietly. And, the elephants would come like, and they'd come screaming right up to the car, and they'd stop. They wouldn't hit us. Charge after charge after charge. We never ran away. We just stood there, of course, and all of this was being filmed. So, we started to see the same elephants over and over again, and after a while, they stopped charging. So we felt pretty good about that. We'd made peace with Gorongosa's elephants, and Joyce had learned a lot of new stuff. We had a really cool film. And in fact, the film, War Elephants, did really well. It was nominated for an Emmy. It won all kinds of awards, and it got the attention of PBS. And PBS was like, hey, that's pretty cool. Why don't we do a longer story on your work in Gorongosa? So I got to stay in the park again, this time for 2 years straight. The idea was that we would just follow all the things that were going on in Gorongosa, just as they happened, the human and wildlife stories. And we would just cover things. We didn't set up anything. We didn't stage anything. We didn't need to. There was tons of action. And again, I was going to be the storyteller. So I got to, I was the main character, the narrator, and the wildlife cameraman. And I was there for 2 years. That was perfect for me. So I was back in with the elephants again. And one night, one afternoon, I was out with Greg Carr, the philanthropist, and a ranger named Marvin Echo. Well, we were filming elephants, and it was amazing. It was the best encounter I'd had with elephants. All the time I've been there filming. Babies were playing all around the car. The mothers were, spread out around. They were scoffing up these little brown seed pods. They're called Acacia albida tree seed pods. And they were just eating those things up. And time went on. I got some great footage. The elephants moved off, and we were like, we're not going to follow them. And it was getting late, so we decided we'd move on. We'd go back to park headquarters. Along the way, elephants had knocked a tree down across the road. It was just starting to get dark, so I flicked my lights on, and I started to beat my way through the bushes in my Land Rover around the tree, and suddenly I heard elephants trumpeting on my left. So I looked up to see 3 adult females, tuskless, coming straight at me. So I switched off the car. We sat quietly as one of them came rushing right up to the edge of the car, and she stopped, and she stood there, and she took her trunk, and she smelled each one of us, and she gazed down at us through the open bars, and I thought, oh, it'll only be a matter of time. She'll be backing up and, give us some space, and we'd be free to go. But she didn't. She just stood there. Time went on, and finally, she lowered her head, and with the full force of her body, she slammed into the front of the car. She hit so hard that the protective bars and the body of the car just collapsed, and the tire on the opposite side of the car blew right off its rim. At the same time, I heard this loud bang go off, and I didn't realize until later it was Marvin Echo with his .458, the big caliber rifle shooting right over my head. The elephant backed up, and I was like, God, we better give her some space. So I turned the car and I started to back up, whereupon she put her head down and she came straight at us between the headlight, and she smashed into the front of the car and started driving us backwards. The protective metal bars in front of me just started to buckle in front of me as I was trying to steer the car, but it was pointless. I had zero control over the car. We were rocketing backwards. I was just elephant head in front of me with ears, and it was about this far from me, and my hands on the wheel. We went back till we hit into a tree, and Marvin Echo fired another shot over her head, and she disappeared into the forest. Well, we pulled the car back onto this little track and jumped out with a jack and started to change the tire, whereupon, out of the darkness now comes this screaming elephant. Marvin Echo stood there, fired his last warning shot. They're given 3. She spun around, disappeared. We fixed the tire, and we limped back to park headquarters. My Land Rover was a wreck, but the bars it held, no one got hurt, and my confidence with the elephants was totally shattered, though. I was no longer willing to hold my ground against these charging elephants, especially in the dark. But where to begin, what to do? We were there we had a lot more work to do. My sister wanted to study the signals the elephants give before they charge. I was just like, oh man. I was no longer, I was like, no, okay, but From now on, I'm gonna have a clear escape route, my hands on the ignition. Here's a sequence from the show. Joyce thinks that reading the signals may hold the key to making peace with the elephants here. But she's not just the elephant whisperer. She's also my big sister. Beating around in the bush with Joyce is always an adventure. She's got to get detailed ID shots, and that means getting close. And with these elephants, that makes me nervous. I think you don't need that. That was so stupid. Startling them is the last thing I want. Sorry. Now I've got you worked up. No. Okay. I never do that. It never happens to me.
Just be quiet.
I'm gonna give myself an out, Joyce, because I just don't.
Wait.
Being smashed by these elephants is too fresh in my mind.
She's scared, Doc. They're not going to come to the Turn off the phone. I'm telling you, just be quiet.
I didn't have a choice. There was no other way to go towards them.
Whatever.
I feel it's somewhat respectful to give if they come at us to what?
I disagree.
I tell you, when you get smacked by those things,
I've been smacked by them.
not like I've been smacked.
I've been smacked.
We were pushed around like a matchbox.
I know.
That elephant's head was right here. This bar was bent. And
I know.
it was the only thing that kept me between her.
All right, let's just focus on getting the pictures.
A rocky start, but at least she's got an ID shot. Oh, my sister, I tell you. Families. Elephants also live in family groups, consisting of great-grandmothers, grandmothers, mothers, and all of their babies. The males leave the families in their mid to late teens, but they always come back to visit their families. Sadly, in Gorongosa, many of the families were destroyed during the war. And so that left orphans to come together to form their own families. Pretty messed up. But we got to know one family group that Joyce reckoned was intact. And we called them the Mabenzis because they always charged us. The matriarch, which is the leading female, the oldest female, was easy to identify because she had this crumpled ear. She earned the name Provocadora because she often instigated the rest of her family to lead a group charge at us. And so these elephants were really problematic. They spent a lot of time in the core of the park, and we really wanted to try to habituate those elephants to us being there, to cars coming back into the park, to tourists being there. And so we had to sort of spend time in their presence. And I was like, Joyce, we just got to keep a long distance away from them. So one day, I got to tell you a little bit about these elephants. First of all, this one here on the left with the cup-shaped ear notch there, we called her, the tuskless one, we called her Wana and Zo. And then this one over here with the long tusks, we called her Valente. And the one in the middle there with the sharp pointed tusks, she didn't have a cool Portuguese name. She just was Pointy Tusks. But so anyway, trying to habituate these elephants, one day we followed them into a fever tree forest. And we kept a distance from them, and when the elephants sort of came towards us, we backed away. But then we stopped when they stopped. And as the morning wore on, we were able to get closer and closer until finally, Provocadora had had enough of our presence. And she led a group charge at us with, Wana and Zo, Valente, and pointy tusks, taking turns like a relay race coming after us. This is nonstop. And it was difficult driving through that forest, the downed trees, warthog holes, drainages. I barely got away. The charge lasted for 2.5 minutes. And we know that because we never stopped rolling. And they clearly won. When it was over, they did something that became known as the elephant end zone dance. Joy said that these elephants clearly had not been torn apart by war, but really bonded together. And the thing about the Mabenzis is we kept following them, and they stopped chasing us. And after a while, we were able to work with them, but always at a distance. One day, I spotted the Mabenzis. They were way out in the back of this acacia albida tree forest, and they were deep in there. And there was a big clearing, and I pulled my Land Rover out into the middle of that clearing, thinking, okay, we got plenty of space. We'll just film them from a long distance, and we just started working. It was really interesting. The elephants were coming towards us, but they were also sort of moving to the left of the screen. And what happened was really remarkable.
This is great. We get to watch elephants in their natural state. The old matriarchs, the young adult mothers, the teenage males and the babies, all together. This is how elephants live most of the time.
They all know that we're here, but the wind is in our favor. It's not blowing our horrible smell toward them. I don't think we should prejudge the situation, though.
After a great half hour, they decide to move on. They're about to cross our vehicle track.
Look at them.
What? But something's wrong.
They're sniffing our track, and then looking at us. That is amazing.
Mwanamzo's daughter is not happy with my tire tracks.
Heads high. Now she's going to back away. And they're taking the babies away.
The young mom needs marching orders, so she asks for help.
Interesting. We drove past there half an hour ago. And now Mwanamzo is pissed off.
Mwanamzo knows something scared her daughter over here.
She's menacing toward us. You see, if it's a small thing.
She's bringing Valente and the entire battalion with her to figure it out. Valente steps up to investigate and finds the tracks. She doesn't like them. And her daughter gets a fright.
I don't like that track. Mwanamzo is the one who will decide what they do.
I'm not sure. I really can't get it. She can tell the track is mine. Mwanamzo is not amused. But she's choosing not to charge. That last turn told us to stay put.
So, thank you. Yeah, that's amazing, really. All this time I was saying elephants can see, but they don't look. And, I'd gotten away with all that stuff in Mali and in stories I didn't tell you about in the forest in West Africa. But, I was like, oh my God, I'm sure they saw me. I'm dead. I'm done. And it wouldn't happen, But now I get what it is. It's not that they don't see. It's what they see doesn't register to them the way what they smell does. When they smell you, it's another story. When they hear you, don't really understand it still. But clearly, they care more about what they smell and hear than what they see. Yeah, so elephants, you really need to work with the scent. And that's how I learned to get so many shots with elephants, even in Gorongosa, where they never even know I was there. I was just working with the wind. With lions, you can't use the wind. Yeah. They look at you. They really look at you. So you can't hide from them because they also smell really well. And then you don't really want to just like count on the fact that they might not be able to hear you. But lions are different, for sure. With lions, it kind of depends where you are. If you go to the Serengeti or to the Mara in Kenya, or to places where there's a lot of tourists, you can film lions easily. You still need to be in a car because they would run away from you. But when you get to remote places like Mozambique, it's a whole nother story. You can't just film lions that easily like that. Well, in Mozambique, I came across a lion, and filming him is an experience I'll never forget. This guy was outrageous. He was crazy. We had no idea where this lion had come from, but he was wild. And he was a fighter. With lions, you can tell a lot what their life is like because their face says it all. This guy was something. Anyway, I'd recently built this low-angle camera mount for my Land Rover, and I built it for filming lions because with lions, you want to get the camera low. You want to get down as low as possible. You'd like to get on their eye level, or if possible, even lower, because the lower you are, the more dramatic they look. So I was really excited to film this new lion with the thing, and when I had the opportunity, I came into this guy way too quickly and way too fast. My low-angle camera mount had me in this very exposed position outside of my car, like kind of sit on the running board like this, right, with the camera between my legs, and my legs are on the bars there, and so just off the ground. So anyway, I came and I got him into position. I started filming. He was laying there. And the next thing I knew, I was looking down. He was just looking straight down my lens. And I just saw in the camera these eyes, coming in this scarred up face. And his tail started twitching outside the frame of my camera. And I was like, oh man, this is not good, He's starting crouching down, and I was like, okay, now I got to do something here because he's about to spring on me. And so I just thought, okay, I think I'm just going to turn the camera away from his glare and sort of face the other way. I started to hear the lion go, grunt, and then sort of, groan. I was like, oh man, I'm done. Suddenly the grass rustled all around me, and I flinched, braced myself in silence. The lion had sprung the other way and disappeared into the tall grass. Wow, it was really terrifying. But so I didn't have much of I had some shots of this lion. And later the vet, the park vet darted this lion and put a GPS tracking collar on him so we could sort of keep track of his movements on Google Earth. But it also became really easy to find him with the GPS. And so we took that footage and turned it in, it became part of a bigger sequence about this new lion that arrived in Gorongosa taking over another pride. Here's a scene from that. Oops, here's this guy, but he's really something else. Here's a scene.
Well, I've got now GPS coordinates for him. He's approximately 400 meters away. We're gonna have to hang a left here into the bush.
Oh, I forgot to tell you that
there's
a little technique here that I learned to do with this guy towards the end.
There he is. Wow. Look at that. He's with Elena's sister now, and her cubs aren't here either. This guy isn't just passing through. He's a real threat. He is a scrapper and a fighter. His face is all ripped up. And he's just a badass. He is a serious badass. He makes MO2 look like a house cat. You know, he's the kind of guy who's got tons of confidence. He's just such a beautiful animal. When he looks down my lens, it gives me chills. He's truly wild. I have to drop the camo sheet while filming him so he doesn't charge. The power of that roar is just crazy. It sends shivers up and down your spine. The sound is so loud you can hear it echoing off all the foliage around here. That's definitely one of my most favorite of all time sounds. To listen to the lions roaring at that close distance. I just wish everybody in the world could experience that. Thank you. Yeah, he was something else. Lions, love them. Just totally love them. Crocodiles are also cool. But with crocodiles, you actually, you just have to hide from crocodiles. You have to be invisible. That's the only way. They have a very ancient brain, and we'll get to that. But, you know, these are all dangerous animals: elephants, lions, crocodiles. And we always talk about them as being so scary and everything, but really they're not so scary. You know, if you play the rules right, if you don't do stupid things like I did when I got low there, or let them, you know, smash your car and things like that, then they're really not that bad. I think we over dramatize, you know, the danger with these animals. The truth is, the real danger is people. And I've tried really hard to avoid working in war zones, but I've ended up in the middle of conflicts. And you know, sadly, in Gorongosa there, while I was there, the war started up again. And I lived for 2 years in the midst of a pretty tense situation. Basically, what happened is after the war, the two sides of the war, Renamo and Frelimo, became political parties, and they duked it out in government for 20 years. Well, suddenly, the leader of the Renamo party, who has never had to demilitarize, couldn't win a battle in government, so he left government and he returned to his old rebel base on Mount Gorongosa with something like 500 soldiers, all armed with RPGs and AK-47s, and they beat our rangers and burned the ranger post to the ground. You know, they basically started causing trouble in the communities, killing people, attacking civilian vehicles, and government forces retaliated, and it just became a big mess. But so we couldn't go up to the mountain anymore, but there was a ton of space out there, wilderness, you know, roadless wilderness in Gorongosa that we still had room to explore. One day, flying over the north of the park, I spot a huge group of the absolute masters of survival, crocodiles. I don't know for sure, but from the air, it looks like a massive gathering, bigger than I've ever seen before. I've got to get a closer look. This could be a great filming opportunity. During the Civil War, while most big animals were being killed off, the crocs just sank to the safety of the riverbeds.
Now some people think that Gorongosa may have one of the biggest populations of crocs in Africa.
There's a bunch of crocodiles on the beach across the way. Crocodiles are really skittish. They key on movement, so whenever they see anything move, their immediate reaction is to go into the water. The trick with filming crocodiles is that you have to stay hidden. They don't seem to have long memory for what's around them, so if you scare them, within 2 hours they'll be back. I'm just gonna sit quietly inside this hide, and I bet crocodiles will be all around me by the end of the day.
After a few hours of waiting, they start to surface. There's something so eerily beautiful about the way these ancient hunters just ooze into view. It gives me chills every time I see it.
Will you repeat what you said, please?
Renamo basically have walked away from negotiations, and they said they're going to block EN1 and EN6 tomorrow, and that's definitely going to draw action.
Oh, wow. Okay, that sounds pretty serious. Okay, so what's our plan then? We'll pack up and fly by helicopter back to Chitango?
Just load one tent with, non-essentials. We have to as well.
Okay, copy that. We'll be there shortly.
The threat level doesn't look too high. But when a rebel militia says foreigners should leave the area, it's probably a good idea to take a lesson from the crocodiles and back away for a while.
God, and we were just starting to get it too. These guys seem to be on the warpath, so we got to get out of here.
Thank you. Yeah, it's pretty scary times actually. It went on and on. This thing. It was for some reason we stayed pretty safe there in the middle of the park. But eventually it got really bad, and it looked like the whole country was going to turn into all-out war. The local town of Villa Gorongosa, just thousands of refugees. The Renamo was attacking the military convoy on the main road to the coast daily, burning trucks and buses and cars and killing people. And there was this fighting all around us, and it was heating up. And so we decided that it was time to go. We had to leave. My sister and the film crew flew out to the coast by helicopter, but I was nervous to leave all my cameras and my Land Rover and all my things that I was living with in the park there. So I decided that I would join the military convoy and go to the coast by road. But by the time I got the roof and the doors and everything back and all my valuables inside my car, I missed the military convoy. And a soldier at the roadblock was willing to let me pass to catch up to the convoy if I gave him some money. Foolishly, I did. And an hour down the road, going as fast as I could, I hadn't seen any other vehicles. The only thing I saw was burned out skeletons of trucks and buses and cars that had already been attacked. And my eyes, so used to looking for wildlife, was now looking for Renamo, rebels laying in ambush. And I just had this terrible feeling that I was going to come under attack at any minute. I pushed that little Land Rover. It was a green Land Rover, looked just like all the other government and military Land Rovers. I went as fast as I could go, which wasn't very fast. And I finally caught up to the convoy. And I tucked myself in between a couple of big trucks and made it to the coast safely. And with a lot of relief, but a seriously heavy heart for having to leave Gorongosa. After decades of work,
The dream of saving Gorongosa National Park was hanging by a thread. And then the rains came. The wet season seemed to cool the flames of war. And a place that looked like a dust bowl when I left became an inland sea. The break in the conflict gives me a chance to return and do something I've been dreaming about. Last year, I flew over a huge colony of nesting birds. It must be one of the biggest bird spectacles in all of Africa. But as far as we know, it's never been properly explored.
What amazing to be able to, thank you. To be able to get back to the park was, just incredible. The whole time I was gone 3 months, it just poured rain. And the lake in the middle, which is a pretty decent sized lake, just as it said, 20 times its normal size. It was crazy, but it wasn't just a big lake now. It was a big lake surrounded by a swamp. And the idea was to go to this bird colony, but we had to get there. And we brought a special boat up from South Africa, just an aluminum hulled, boat. But we couldn't get it on the lake without going up these hippo channels. And I'd because the hippos come out at night and go back in, and so they kind of wear this little space. And I'd been hit by a hippo when I was on a boat when I was in high school, and it's a terrifying thing. The boat that I was in there was a big wooden boat, and this little aluminum thing was way too small, and we were overloaded with camping gear and camera equipment.
They're very territorial and seriously dangerous.
Hippo's on the right. Right there. It's coming this way. You see that? Look how fast that thing moves. You see the wave that thing creates. You could surf that wave. He's still coming. And the problem is he's headed in the same place we are. Now he's gonna stop. He's gonna stop and turn around and go the other way. You see, the last thing you wanna do is corner these guys. Okay, it looks like we're on the lake. That's a good thing. Hi, and there's our destination right there.
If wolves could talk, this place would tell some crazy stories. Back in the 1960s, people used to come here from all over the world to sip cocktails and watch the sunset.
That's pretty cool. This is home.
After independence from Portugal in 1975, it became a base for Renamo soldiers fighting in the Civil War.
Looks like we can move in. Right, here we are at the bar. What can I offer you to drink? Sorry, we don't have any ice. So, based out of this place we called Hippo House, we could explore this bird colony by boat. And it was crazy to see how this place had transformed during the wet season. This is the same forest I was getting chased around by elephants in. Now it's just full of, yellow-billed storks and open-billed storks, African darters, nesting by the thousands, and birds flying all over the place, and crocodiles had gathered, by the bottom of these trees to collect any chicks that were falling out. It was just crazy. The place was awesome. But my idea was, I brought the roof rack from my Land Rover, and my idea was to put it up high enough from one of these trees that I could film down into one of those yellow-billed stork nests and film the eggs hatching. It proved to be much harder than I thought. The acacia albida trees there, they have these, even the bark has these horrible claw-shaped thorns, and the branches are like clusters of razor wire. And by the time I got myself in the tree where I wanted to put my reef rack, my body was just totally scratched and bleeding. And when I finally had that platform in place and I could stand on it, my hands were just swollen from all the thorns that had gone in. They looked like balloons. But it was an awesome view up there. The thing is, when I got my tripod and camera cases and climbing equipment and food and water, it was miserably cramped and uncomfortable. I had these guys are. Sorry, I jumped, didn't I? Did I miss one? Well, I think there might be a slide missing, but I meant to show you a picture of the thing. I had to wrap it in camouflage netting, and then it was hard to move, couldn't move very easily, and it was hot, and the birds shot on me all day long. But it was pretty awesome, and
these guys are called yellow-billed storks. Their feathers are tinged with pink only during the breeding season. It's hard to tell the male from the female, but they're both very tender to each other. All the flirting eventually leads to this. It takes incredible dedication and patience to hatch these eggs. It's going to take the same to film it.
Jeff, do you copy? I think the eggs are hatching. Oh my God, I think they're hatching.
Oh, there's this. I got my order mixed up a little. That's the hide up there. Anyway, so the lake level was going down, and we had to get the boat out of there. But I left the platform in place, and I came back overland later on. I got to film the chicks growing up and the parents bringing bigger and bigger and fish. And finally, the birds taking their first flight, which was really cool. And, now when I see those birds out in the park, I knew what it takes to, bring them into this world. It's a lot of work for the parents. But I'm pretty confident that each one of these birds, even they all look the same, are totally different. And as they go through life, they become better at some things than others. They, for instance, maybe go for a particular kind of a fish, or they hunt in a certain way. It's the same with all things. I know lions that became expert, warthog ambush attack, and that's all. Then that's what they do. They just get better and better at that, and they stop hunting anything else. They just do what they do really well. In Gorongosa, the park I think is going to be okay in the long run. I bet if we go back there in 20 years, the place will be thriving. It'll be, there's a peace agreement on the table, and I think it's inevitable that the park will survive. I sure hope so, and I hope to be out there myself. But I learned a lot of things while I was out there, and things take time, and one thing leads to another. And also that, if we keep doing the things we like to do, like the animals, we get better and better at it. So looking back, I think the key is doing what you love to do. I absolutely love being out in the middle of the most remotest parts of Africa, filming wildlife. And, it's not a job, it's more of a passion. And so I can put every ounce of energy into that. I don't get tired of it or watch the clock. I can give it everything I have, and that then leads to more of what I like to do. And I think, all of us in that way, because we can sort of, in our creative careers that we're all interested in, we can keep doing the things that we really like to do, and we lead from one thing to the next, and we keep pushing ourselves in the direction of what we're better at. And the more we do that, the better we come at it. And that's what I mean by steering. You can steer yourself in the direction you want to go in this business. As long as you're doing what you love, you do it really, really well. So thank you guys. I appreciate you all coming out and hearing it tonight. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and everything. Facebook, Instagram, the likes.
Awesome. Bob Poole, ladies and gentlemen, outstanding.
Thank you.
Awesome, mate. Well done.
Peter, thank you. All right.
Okay. We have just a few minutes for Q&A. I believe there's some mics roving around out here somewhere. And so we could take some questions for Bob real quick.
There's a question. Hey, sure. Right.
So just repeat the question.
So the question is, we're shooting a tremendous amount of footage. How do we keep track of it all? How do we have enough cards to back it up? For example, with the last show that we did, the cheetah show that I started with, 18 terabytes we shot, and we were using a Sony F55 with an R7 recorder. It was helpful to have the
XOCN recording format. Yep, 16-bit.
Because it's a higher compression, but still excellent quality. But still, what the hard part is not the space, because we just bring enough hard drives with us. It's, the backup time and everything else. Because, we start 4 a.m., we finish, way after dark. We don't finish backing up our transfers till midnight. So you're looking at 4 hours of sleep a night. That's why it's important to really love what you do, because otherwise you would hate it. No, so that's a great question. But yeah, it's something to think about. And logging in the field, of course, is really important. Luckily, nowadays, we can scrub through material really fast. We build string outs of the best material when we're back and give that to the editors rather than have them plow through everything. But you're right, with wildlife, because you don't know what's going to happen, you don't know where your stories are leading to, or you never know what the behaviors, well, you don't usually know what the behavior is going to be. So you shoot a lot of stuff that just doesn't go anywhere.
Okay. Question?
Sorry, should I just go ahead? Yeah, so that's a great one.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead. Just repeat the question so we can pick it up on
audio. Yes, question was about batteries and how do we keep going? It's a really good question. It's a huge challenge. That Land Rover that you kept seeing, I've been modifying that thing, and from the beginning I've had a huge battery source in there with inverters. So I can run cameras all day off of it, charge batteries, computers, everything. But we don't always have that thing. So batteries are really important. Sometimes we have small generators. Sometimes at night we're going back to a place that's got electricity. But it's something that you have to have lots of and plenty of a plan on how you're going to do it. The other thing is cameras that you can turn off and save power is really important. It's one of the great things about the Sony F55, F5 series. They power up really quickly. So with wildlife, you need to be ready really quickly to shoot. And that's a big issue for us because you can't just always sit with a camera and stand by. You run out of power. Thanks for asking that one. Go ahead, right behind there. I'll try to look around.
So the major point that was like the people aspect, right?
Yeah.
Going forward, what do you think is like the diplomatic, like what do they need to do to, as like a people, to thrive with the animals and as a people in that area?
I'm not sure if you mean the war situation or, yeah, I think people are sick of fighting wars, to be honest. I don't know. I have hope that a lot of the problem with Gorongosa is that like they're in a war cycle. Mozambique, there's a bit of a war cycle going on there. Imagine living 30 years of war. You didn't get educated. You never knew what like you're missing, right? And so the solution to every little problem is to fight. But young kids are tired of that. They've got phones now. They're starting to see a little bit of what's going on in the rest of the world. And people get tired of this. It's like, let those guys, once the old folks are done. And I think, I just believe that there'll be less fighting. I really do. It's ingrained in that, but I do believe things are going to get better. There you go.
Which one? Hold on, I have a microphone. Where are you? Which one?
Right up here.
Dealing with all the temperature changes from 100 to 120 degrees.
Yeah.
How did you manage to deal with that with the cameras?
Yeah. Actually, the cameras do really well. Surprising. We suffer. I hate that really hot temperature. I remember like in that Mali stuff, we started our day again at 4:00. You have to be in your location, settled quiet for those elephants to even appear. So you're up really, really early. And I tell you, 4:00 was the best part of the day because it was like the only time when you weren't just like, but it was so hot there that it felt like your eyelids were burning. I mean, it was horrible. But the cameras held up amazingly well. And I have to tell you, after that sandstorm, the thing was just, literally, cameras just, I was using a Sony F900 for that. And literally just took it apart, shook it out, sand was coming everywhere. It was insane. I should have shown some images of what our camp looked like when that was, it was nuts. I never seen anything like it. But yeah, so the cameras, and I've worked also in extremely cold environments. I'm always amazed at how well these cameras actually do in cold and warm and water, wet. You think that, oh my God, the thing's totally soaked. And, take the lid off and let it dry out and don't power it up and wait till it's totally dry, turn it on, it's fine. I mean, yeah, they're amazing. No question about it. So yeah, I don't worry that much about it. In fact, I was laughing with Peter last night because it's like, oh yeah, we got a brand new camera. What's the first thing we do with it? We go just totally destroy it, And, but anyway, how else are you going to get the shots? There you go.
Okay, we can do one more question
Okay.
really quickly, and then we have to move on.
Do you want to? You had your hand up right there. Yeah.
Hold on. I'm almost.
This is the last question, guys.
There it is. Okay.
Sorry.
So, have you ever worked with any wild canine species like coyotes and wolves? And would you have any advice with working with those guys?
You know, I did do a film about wolves long ago, and I filmed wolves plenty of times. Done a lot of work in the West and also Alaska and places like that with wolves and canines. Just was doing wild dogs in Africa. But you know, I think all these animals, you know, I would say one thing is they're way smarter than we ever give them credit for. They know a lot more about what we're trying to accomplish. So if you can win, I mean, with us trying to film, and not crocodiles, but other things, even lions or whatever, and I think the dogs tend to be smarter than the cats, but that's just me. But they all get it. They all get it, even the birds after a while, that like you're not a threat. And the moment when they realize that you're not a threat, they go back to doing their natural behavior, and that's what we're after anyway. So the first thing that we always try to do with animals is to keep a distance, try not to disturb what they're doing. Once they get used to us, then we'll have more freedom to move in closer or to make bigger movements or try things. But you need to gain their trust. So I would say with your coyotes or wolves or whatever it is, make sure that they know that you're not out to hurt them. And also give them time. It takes way more time than you think to earn their trust, but that's the first step. And it's with wild animals. It's pretty amazing how you can gain their trust.
Okay, Bob Poole, ladies and gentlemen, please thank you very much.
Okay.
All right. I'm sorry we can't get more questions in because we do need to keep going, but you can capture him later and target him for any questions you like because he's not going anywhere. We have him captive here at Full Sail. All right. Okay, so very briefly, we'd like to bring on our next special guest, the president of Full Sail, Gary Jones. Please welcome your president.
Right back at you. Gosh, you guys are famous. How's Hall of Fame 9? Isn't it awesome? Oh my gosh, I've had so much fun. I've sunburned my nose completely off by being out in the parking lot with you guys the last few days. It's been wonderful. Bob, I have to say, I told him as he came off stage, we haven't met before now, right, Bob? This is our first time meeting?
Right.
You're very much my hero. Very much my hero.
Thank you.
To champion other creatures that don't have the power to represent themselves is so important in this world, and you're doing a marvelous job of that.
Well, thanks.
On behalf of all of us, thank you for championing that cause. So great.
Thank you.
Thanks, brother.
Thank you.
Very important. And just this week, Bob, to delight your heart, just this week, Full Sail has rolled out a partnership with the Nature Conservancy, which is, as far as I know, the largest environmental organization on planet Earth. And they're all about doing good for every living thing, protecting waters and lands that all of us need, especially humans, as we go from a planet of 7 billion to 9 billion in the next couple of decades. So Full Sail is doing an initiative. You may have seen the butterflies out front, the monarchs. We call it the Monarch Initiative, and it's about calling attention of our community at large to the important mission of preserving our environment in any imaginable imagining of that concept. So it was very fortuitous that we had you here today, too, for that reason. So, ladies and gentlemen, I am here to just say a couple of brief words about Sony and how incredibly special they have been to Full Sail. Not this year, not the last 2 years, but across decades. They have been such a good partner with us, and they have represented you so well by placing their latest and greatest product on this campus in an effort to make sure you, the leaders of the industry tomorrow, right? Right? Yeah. To make sure that you get first look and first use of amazing technology that they launch time after time after time each year. And so our partnership with Sony has been one that benefits the student body and the graduates of Full Sail. And so today, to have these fantastic people here to represent Sony from the top down, to say your lives, your education, your future careers really matter to Sony is a big deal. So we're so grateful to you guys. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gary. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have another special surprise for you guys this afternoon. Something's here, right? So what is it? All right, as you guys know, motion picture camera technology, we've been developing that in its various forms and functions and sizes for many years, right? You guys use a lot of it here today. You've used it in the past. You'll continue to use it in the future. A very big part of this is pushing the technology further. How far can we go? Pushing better picture quality, higher resolution, more dynamic range, just overall pushing technology way beyond what we can do even a year or 2 years ago. So at Sony, we continue to push that technology envelope. We have dedicated engineers that work on camera technology every single day of every week, and the result is the pinnacle of what we want to show you here today. So there's a big misconception in the market, in the industry, where there's a camera every other week. Well, it depends on what level you're talking about. At the very high end of the technology spectrum, it's actually every number of years, because it's millions of dollars, it's a huge engineering effort to make that next big quantum leap in where the motion picture camera technology needs to go. It takes years of development. It's not a camera every other week, believe me. So what we'd like to do today for you guys, right here in this auditorium, I'd like to bring up our special guests again. Please, Katsunori Yamanuchi, Gary Jones, and Bob Poole. Gentlemen. And so we're going to unveil for you here today our next generation motion picture camera technology. Gentlemen, please, if you could do the honors. When you guys are ready.
Oh, I see. I think.
All right, we give you Venice. Venice is Sony's next high-end motion picture camera. Yes. It is a 6K full frame image sensor, 24 by 36, full frame. So we can go way beyond the image canvas of Super 35, way beyond. And here it is here, ladies and gentlemen, for you guys here today. Thank you very much. All right. Okay. So, having said that, you guys can experience the camera a little bit later, ask whatever questions you like. You guys will be getting your hands on this camera technology in the future. And with that, we'd like to thank our special guests for coming up here and unveiling the camera. Thank you. All right. And with that, to finish the ceremonies for today, I'd like to bring up Scott. Scott Dansby, please come up to the stage, and he'll close it out for us. Thank you very much.
All right.
We really appreciate it.
All right. What'd you guys think? Yeah? Yeah? It was amazing. Katsunori, Bob, amazing. Thank you so much. From the bottom of all of our hearts, I think, on behalf of the entire Full Sail community here, what an amazing experience. Bob, your presentation was amazing. Thank you again for so much that you're doing. Likewise, Katsunori, thank you so much for all the support from Sony for all these years. It's much appreciated. We're not done yet. One other thing.
Are you giving away this camera?
Yes. No. I'm getting a look. I'm getting a look from Marty over there. He's a little nervous. We are not giving away the camera, but we are going to give away something. Okay. 10 things. If you guys check underneath your chairs, we've got 10 lucky winners. If you've got the envelope, we've got a prize for you in the back. Come find us. And like I said, a special giveaway prize from our guests at Sony as to finish out the presentation.
What are they getting, Scott? What are they getting?
It's a special travel bag with Sony, yes. Sony logo. Okay, there we go. We got one.
There's another one.
All right.
There's another one. Yay.
Make sure you find us on your way out, and we'll make sure to get you your prize. Other than that, everybody, thank you so much for coming out. Appreciate it. Enjoy the Hall of Fame. Enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy tonight. We'll see you later.